Albert Breer, the Monday Morning Quarterback senior NFL reporter. They call him Bert locally. I was watching the Patriots pregame show, and all I know is Tom Curran and Michael Hawley kept saying, let's go out to Bert. And I go, who's Bert? Next thing I know, I got Albert Breer on the field. So should I call you Bert?
You can call me whatever you want,
All right.
Dan. I never correct anybody on that. So whatever you're most comfortable with, I'm good with.
Okay, if Phillip Rivers is the answer, I don't want to know the question, but I do have to ask that question. If not Phillip Rivers, what are the other options for the Colts as a backup quarterback or starting/backup quarterback?
I mean, the plan, if it's not Riley Leonard, which we'll see, he's got the sprained knee. If it's not Riley Leonard, Brett Rippon, who does have experience and has played in the NFL, would probably be the next answer. And you'd be working out some guys on Tuesday, which is today, to try to figure out, where you can go. This is really sort of like a perfect storm of quarterback crap for them, like in dealing with Daniel Jones getting hurt, and I'm not making light of it, but like Daniel Jones having the torn Achilles after playing on a fractured fibula. Riley Leonard tweaks his knee. You've got Anthony Richardson, who has the orbital injury. Like from what I understand, he's still resting that eye. There's no timetable for his return. And, you've got a team that's clearly reeling. There's lost 3 games in a row. That's got a gauntlet down the stretch, has Seattle and San Francisco the next couple of weeks. If you're Chris Ballard and Shane Steichen and the guys in charge there, you're doing everything you can to try to create some level of hope that they can, dig what was an incredibly promising season out of a ditch. And so I'm sure we'll get more into why Phillip and all of that, but there aren't a ton of options. We're past the trade deadline. The guys that are out there for a pretty clear reason. You're not available at the most important position on the field this time of year if there are a lot of teams that think he can help.
He hadn't played in 5 years. Now, granted, I don't think his arm strength is going to be lesser because it wasn't great.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't have mobility. But I mean, can you see a scenario where Phillip Rivers is playing football the rest of this season?
Well, so he had his workout last night, and my understanding is he threw it pretty well. But like you said, I think you sort of expect that. I remember having this conversation with Joe Flacco earlier this year, and he said to me, he's like, I think I'm going to be able to throw at an NFL level until I'm 50. He's like, I don't think my arm strength's going away. And I think anybody, even a suburban dad like me, I can go out and throw the football in the backyard. I can't run like I used to, but I can go out and throw the ball to my kids, So I think that's one of that's one of those things where it's like, yes, he can still throw the ball. He's been coaching high school football, so he's been around it, coaching his son down there in Alabama. And, he has been working out and training NFL and college quarterbacks over the last few years. So he's stayed connected. He's stayed working. He's still throwing. That's not the question. The question is, can he still move around enough to protect himself? Has he been doing the work to keep himself in the shape he needs to be in to do that? And then I think the big question is how are you going to take a hit? That's the thing is I don't think anybody can project, what's going to happen if he were out there on Sunday and, Byron Murphy, the 3 technique from Seattle, gets through the line and buries him. Is he going to be able to get up from that? I think that's probably the biggest question. And, I think the timing of it is a question too. You mentioned the 5-year layoff. You remember Drew Henson, right?
Yep.
Back in the day. So for those who don't know, if Drew Henson, had come out of Michigan, in 2022 and had kept playing football at Michigan, if he had come out in 2022, he might have been a contender to be the first overall pick. Instead, he takes the money and goes and plays for the Yankees. That doesn't work out. He tried to come back to football a few years later. Well, I remember talking to some Cowboys people. I covered the Cowboys on the beat a few years after that. And I remember having just casual conversation with people about Drew Henson and why he didn't make it, because physically he's very talented. He was a really good quarterback at Michigan, the successor to Tom Brady there. And, what the Cowboys people said to me was, you don't understand when you're away from it, how quickly the timing goes away and how hard it is to replicate that. And all the things that go along with being able to stand in the pocket with your eyes downfield with, 250, 300-pound guys who are elite athletes coming at you at full speed. Like, there's no way to replicate that. So if you're out of it for a few years, it's hard to get it back. And their thing was that's what happened to Drew Henson, right? Wouldn't that apply here too? I mean, I know Rivers obviously has a ton more experience, but if you've been out of it, I would think the timing of it would be an issue too. So there's a ton of reason to ask questions about it. And I think, if nothing else, like this at least shows the Colts locker room that Steichen and Ballard are doing everything they possibly can to create some modicum of hope. Whether or not it can actually work, I think, I don't know that anybody has the answer to that question because this feels pretty unprecedented.
Why is the trade deadline where it is during the season?
Well, I mean, the main reason is so you don't see teams dumping players late. That's the main thing is, what the NFL wants to avoid is a situation where you have, some 3-win team or 2-win team and the general managers or buddies or whatever. And you see competitive balance getting thrown off because this player or that player is getting moved to another team at the end of the year. Now that team that's already non-competitive becomes even less competitive. I think it has more to do with that, in that like your team is your team. They have done work to move it back. I mean, this DP as well as anybody. Like the last few years, they have been in those situations where it's like, okay, like we're gonna move it back another week. And I've actually seen some of the data on this, which is interesting, that the percentage of the season that's done when they have a trade deadline is lower in football than it is in baseball or basketball. And the case for moving it back even further than it is now is to kind of get it up to that standard that you see in other sports. But the main reason why is like the NFL wants to avoid a situation where, you have teams end of November, beginning of December, dumping all of these players, can affect attendance at games, can affect the competitiveness of certain matchups. That's really the reason why.
Talking Albert Breer, the Monday Morning Quarterback senior NFL reporter. You have this proliferation of long field goals in the NFL. And we're about aesthetics.
Yep.
And I don't know if the competition committee has ever addressed, can you raise the crossbar? Like, is there something that they've gotten too good at this?
Yep.
Like, just like the extra point that would maybe change the philosophy of all these longer field goals here.
Yeah, I think there are things you could do. You could raise the crossbar, you could narrow the uprights. I think you got to look at the reasoning why this is happening too. Like I had a really good conversation with Nick Folk about this, a couple of weeks ago, and he's obviously been doing it for a long, long time. I believe this is his 19th year in the NFL. And so I asked him, I said, like, what do you think it is? He said the K ball is definitely a factor. Now, again, for those who don't know,
explain the K ball.
Huh?
Explain the K ball.
Right. So I guess we can relate this to Deflategate. Like quarterbacks have always been given the opportunity to prepare balls, right? So they can have each game ball just as they like it for game day. So the quarterbacks have always had that opportunity to do that. They didn't allow kickers to do that until this year. So now kickers have the same opportunity to prepare the K balls, which are the balls that are there for the kickers. The kickers and punters can prepare the balls the same way the quarterbacks do for game day. So I think most kickers would tell you that's a factor. I don't know exactly what they're doing. Whether I actually asked him, I said, "Is there something everyone's doing to the ball?" He's like, "I don't know. I just haven't talked to enough people to know." But I'm sure that everybody's done research onto it and looked into it and is doing something that's helping them. So that's number one. The second thing that folks said to me was more interesting, though. He said because it's become so competitive for college scholarships, and then obviously, spots in the NFL, what you're seeing is better athletes at the position now. And so you've got a guy who, is a really good high school player who's maybe a really good high school receiver or a really good high school corner or a really good high school linebacker. And maybe he could play Division II or III college football. But if he learns how to kick, he can kick at Alabama or he can kick at Oregon or he can kick at Ohio State. And so now you have these guys who are like really good athletes in their own right, who are probably, college football players at a baseline. And now they're learning how to kick. And so you have these guys who are more explosive, who have better legs, learning how to do it. You add on to that some of the personal training they're getting, and better athletes are making it at that position. He had mentioned actually Tyler Loop, who's the Ravens kicker, who was from the University of Arizona, which is Folk's alma mater. He said he worked out with him, and he was like, I couldn't believe, like, when I talked to the strength coaches at Arizona, what sort of athlete he was. He said he was like a 21 or 22 mile an hour guy on the GPS, which is insane. You know what I mean? Like, that's not that far off from what like the field players run. So I think it's a number of factors, and I don't know exactly how you address it, but I do think that that's the one part that you really won't change. You could go back to the old rules and the K balls and everything else, but I mean, the fact that there are better athletes that are more specialized doing it, I think, is a factor as well.
How many head coaching vacancies do you think we're going to have?
I mean, I think the normal number, probably 7 or 8. You factor in.
Total with like what happened with the Giant.
Yeah, I mean, you have the Giants and the Titans now. I think there are definitely some like that have come up that maybe we didn't expect 2 months ago. Atlanta, Arizona would probably be in that bucket that are at least going to be, under some level of evaluation. What does Cleveland do? And then you have like your curveball, that would be like if Pittsburgh, and I don't think this would be a firing, but if Pittsburgh and Mike Tomlin have a mutual parting. So I think we'll get to that number to 7 or 8. And the interesting thing about it is I think a lot of teams are gonna have to evaluate this, Dan, and say, is what's behind door number 2 worth getting rid of what we know is already behind door
Just
number
like
1?
Penn State.
Right. I mean, I think that's going to be it for a lot of these teams. Because I would make this argument, right? I think what's today, December 9th, right? So if you asked me on December 9th, 2024, I would have told you Ben Johnson and Mike Vrabel are going to be head coaches next year. I don't know where. I can't tell you exactly where, but those two guys are going to be head coaches next year. I'd even maybe have given you Aaron Glenn at that time. I'm pretty sure he's getting one, right? Who is that this year?
I don't know if there's a hot guy.
And that's it. You know what I mean? Like I like you have some interesting names. Like Jesse Minter's done a great job with the Chargers defense. I think Mike McDonald, because of their similar background, helps him a lot. Mike McDonald's had great success in Seattle, of course. Chris Shula, who's got the bloodlines, of course, is in the Rams program. Like he's another one. Like the hot offensive guy. I mean, who is it now? I mean, Joe Brady's had like a little bit of an up and down year in Buffalo. He's interviewed really well. So I think if the Bills finish strong, maybe he becomes the guy, and then you've got a couple of the second chance guys. Mike McCarthy, I think, will be in the mix. But I don't know like that you would look at it right now and say, yes, like this guy will be a head coach next year. And you had at least a couple of those guys last year. And I think in most years you have at least a couple of guys where you can say, yeah, like that guy's going to be a head coach this year. And so if you're a team that's like considering a change or you're on the fence, maybe that gets your guy a stay of execution. I even argue with Miami, right? Like where Mike McDaniel has now, like resurrected, like perception. It was interesting because I was having these conversations with some people with the Dolphins, and what one person told me is like that Steve Ross was hearing the buzz that Mike McDaniel will be a great second chance head coach. And it caused Ross to say, well, wait a second, then why would we get rid of him? You know what I mean? Like if he's going to be such a good, if it's going to be such a good hire for somebody the second time around, why aren't we trying harder to see if we can make the first time around work? So if you're them now and you're the Dolphins, you're looking at it and you're saying, okay, we fired the general manager. Now Mike McDaniel has this team at 6-7. And going into Pittsburgh on Monday night with a chance to get to 500, we're not eliminated from the playoffs. We haven't lost since we fired the GM on Halloween. Wouldn't you think twice about that? So I think that's part of the equation for a lot of these teams.
Thanks again, Bert. Good to have you on.
You got it. You can call me whatever you want, Dan.
Albert Breer, the Monday Morning Quarterback senior NFL reporter. Yeah, I stumbled on to the Patriots pregame show, and our good buddy Tom Kerr and Michael Holley, they're like, let's go out to Bert. I go, who is Bert? And all of a sudden, it's Albert Breer there on the sidelines.